The radio crackled to life at 11:47 p.m., shattering the quiet of Detective Sarah Martinez's patrol car. All units, domestic disturbance, 2847 Maple Grove Lane. Reports of screaming, possible injury. Respond immediately. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to the ignition as her 5-year partner, Rex, a muscular German shepherd with intelligent brown eyes, lifted his head from the back seat. His ears perked forward, sensing the sudden shift in Sarah's energy. "Looks like we're up, buddy," Sarah muttered, flipping on the sirens. The night streets of Columbus, Ohio blurred past as she pressed harder on the accelerator. Rex stood alert in the specially designed K9 compartment, his nose already working overtime, as if he could smell the danger from miles away. When they screeched to a halt in front of the 2-story colonial house, Sarah's stomach dropped. The front door hung crooked on its hinges, splintered wood scattered across the porch. Shattered glass from a broken window glittered under the streetlights like deadly diamonds. A neighbor stood on the adjacent lawn in her bathrobe, phone clutched in trembling hands, pointing frantically toward the house. "He went crazy," the woman screamed. "I heard Jennifer screaming for help. Oh God, the little girl Emma's still in there." Sarah's blood ran cold. A child. She released Rex from the vehicle, and together they approached the entrance, her service weapon drawn, every muscle tensed. "Police, we're coming in," she announced, her voice cutting through the eerie silence that had descended over the house. The scene inside looked like a tornado had torn through the living room. Furniture overturned, family photos smashed on the hardwood floor, their glass frames creating a treacherous pathway. But it was the kitchen that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Blood. Arterial spray painted the white cabinets in stark, horrible patterns. A pool of crimson spread across the tile floor, still wet, still fresh. A woman's shoe lay abandoned near the refrigerator. "Jennifer Clark," Sarah called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. No response. Rex's nose worked furiously, sniffing the air, the blood, the chaos. Then he froze, his body going rigid in that particular way that told Sarah he'd caught a scent. Not the injured woman, something else, someone else. 2 uniformed officers burst through the door behind them. "We've got the suspect in custody out back," one reported breathlessly. "He was trying to flee through the yard. Wife's been transported to Columbus General critical condition. But the kid," his voice broke. "We can't find the kid." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. A 3-year-old girl somewhere in this house of horrors. "Rex, find," she commanded. The German shepherd didn't hesitate. His powerful legs propelled him toward the staircase, nails clicking against the wood as he climbed. Sarah followed, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness of the 2nd floor. Rex moved methodically, checking each room with professional precision. Master bedroom. Empty, bed still made. Bathroom, clear, medicine cabinet hanging open. Guest room, nothing but dust and storage boxes. Then they reached the smallest bedroom at the end of the hall, pink walls adorned with hand-painted butterflies. A toddler bed with a unicorn comforter. Stuffed animals arranged carefully on a bookshelf. Rex's behavior changed instantly. His tail dropped, his posture softened, and he released a soft whine. A sound Sarah had never heard from him in 5 years of partnership. He approached the closet door with unusual gentleness, as if he understood something fragile waited inside. Sarah holstered her weapon and slowly opened the closet door. Her flashlight revealed winter coats, boxes of outgrown clothes, a shelf of board games. At first, she saw nothing. Then Rex pushed past her, nudging aside a heavy wool coat with his nose. There, crammed into the smallest corner behind the coats, sat the tiniest human being Sarah had ever seen look so terrified. Emma Clark couldn't have weighed more than 30 pounds. Her blonde hair was tangled, stuck to her tear-stained cheeks. She wore pajamas covered in cartoon puppies, now wrinkled and damp. Her blue eyes, impossibly wide and glassy with shock, stared straight ahead, unseeing. In her death grip, she clutched a worn teddy bear missing one eye. The child wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't even breathing hard. She had gone somewhere deep inside herself, to a place where the horror couldn't reach her. This absolute stillness was somehow more terrifying than any tantrum could have been. "Emma," Sarah whispered, kneeling down slowly. "Sweetie, I'm Detective Sarah. You're safe now." Nothing, not even a blink. The little girl sat frozen like a statue, trapped in whatever nightmare she'd witnessed. But Rex knew exactly what to do. Moving with extraordinary care, the 70-pound police dog lowered himself to his belly and crawled forward on his elbows, making himself as small and non-threatening as possible. He inched closer to Emma until his large black nose was just inches from her tiny face. Then he did something that made Sarah's throat tighten with emotion. Rex exhaled softly, a gentle doggy sigh that ruffled Emma's hair. The warm breath seemed to break through the child's catatonic state. Her eyes flickered, focused. For the first time since they'd found her, Emma moved. Her small hand emerged from behind the teddy bear, fingers outstretched, trembling. She touched Rex's wet nose with her index finger, so lightly it was barely contact at all. The dog remained perfectly still, patient as stone. Then Emma's entire hand flattened against his muzzle, feeling the soft fur, the warmth of living breath. The trembling that had racked her tiny body began to subside. Not completely, trauma that deep doesn't vanish in moments, but enough. Enough that when Sarah gently scooped her up, Emma didn't scream. She simply wrapped her arms around Sarah's neck and buried her face in the detective's shoulder. As they descended the stairs, Emma's head turned, her eyes following Rex's every movement. The dog walked beside them, protective and alert, this unlikely guardian who had reached a broken child when no human could. Neither Sarah nor Rex understood it fully in that moment, but they had just witnessed the beginning of something extraordinary. A connection that would soon change everything they thought they knew about justice, healing, and the power of unconditional trust. The night had started with violence and terror, but as they stepped out into the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, Emma's small hand reaching toward Rex's fur one more time, Sarah felt the first glimmer of hope. This little girl had survived the unthinkable, and somehow she had found her angel in the most unexpected form. The fluorescent lights of Columbus General Hospital buzzed overhead as Detective Sarah Martinez reviewed her notes outside Jennifer Clark's room. It had been 72 hours since that horrific night, and the evidence against Mark Clark was mounting like an avalanche. Blood-stained clothes, neighbors' testimonies about months of escalating arguments, text messages from Jennifer to her sister, expressing fear, a previous domestic call that had been dismissed when Jennifer refused to press charges. But Mark Clark wasn't confessing. His high-priced attorney, Robert Mitchell, had already filed motions challenging the arrest, claiming self-defense, arguing that Jennifer had attacked first. Without Jennifer's testimony, and the doctors said she'd be in recovery for months, her jaw wired shut, her memories fragmented from the head trauma, the case hinged on one tiny, silent witness. "Emma." Sarah closed her notebook with a frustrated snap. The 3-year-old had been placed with her maternal grandmother, Carol Henderson, a soft-spoken retired schoolteacher who lived 20 minutes outside the city. Child Protective Services had conducted their initial assessment. The report sat heavy in Sarah's hands. Subject exhibits signs of severe trauma, nonverbal, unresponsive to questioning, recommended for immediate psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Michael Chen's office smelled like lavender and vanilla, carefully designed to be calming for traumatized children. The child psychologist, a gentle man in his 40s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, had been working with Emma for 2 weeks. Sarah sat across from him now, desperate for good news. "Nothing?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer from his expression. Dr. Chen shook his head slowly, pulling out a folder thick with drawings. He spread them across his desk like tarot cards revealing a dark future. Every single picture showed the same thing: a large dog, colored in black and brown crayon with meticulous care for a 3-year-old. Some drawings showed the dog with a star on its side. Others showed a tiny stick figure girl holding the dog's paw. She draws this constantly, Dr. Chen explained, his voice heavy with concern. When I try to ask her about that night, she shuts down completely, won't make eye contact, won't respond to any stimulus. But when I give her crayons, this is all she creates, always the same dog. Rex, Sarah murmured, touching one of the drawings. The child had even attempted to draw his K-9 badge. She talks to her stuffed animals, Dr. Chen continued, but only when she thinks no one is listening. Her grandmother recorded some of it. He pressed play on his phone. Emma's tiny voice, barely above a whisper, filled the room. The hero doggy found me. He has magic nose. He's the goodest boy in the whole world. He saved me from the scary place. I wish he could come back. Sarah felt her throat constrict. She'd worked with trauma victims for 15 years, but something about this little girl's pain cut deeper than anything she'd experienced before. Maybe because Emma was the same age as Sarah's niece. Maybe because she'd seen the absolute terror in those blue eyes that night in the closet. What if, Sarah began, an idea forming, what if I brought Rex to see her? Dr. Chen leaned forward, intrigued. The dog, you think that might help? She responded to him that night when she wouldn't respond to anything else. Look at these drawings. She's obsessed with him. What if he's the key to unlocking whatever she's holding inside? Dr. Chen considered this carefully, tapping his pen against his desk. It's unconventional, but trauma therapy often requires unconventional approaches, especially with children this young. The bond she formed with the dog during her worst moment might actually be the bridge we need. Let me speak with her grandmother. 2 days later, Sarah pulled up to Carol Henderson's modest ranch home in the suburbs, Rex panting happily in the back seat. The neighborhood was a far cry from the crime scene house. Neat lawns, children's bikes in driveways, American flags waving in the autumn breeze. Safe, normal, everything Emma's world wasn't anymore. Carol met them at the door, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and worried eyes that hadn't slept properly in weeks. She's in the living room, Carol said quietly. She hasn't spoken a word to me, not one word. I'm her grandmother and she looks right through me like I'm invisible. Her voice cracked, but she keeps asking for the big doggy. Not with words, but she'll point at her drawings and look at the door, waiting. Sarah unclipped Rex's leash. Let's see what happens. The moment they entered the living room, time seemed to freeze. Emma sat on the floor surrounded by her drawings, adding yet another portrait of Rex to her collection. She was so focused on getting the ears exactly right that she didn't notice them at first. Then Rex made a soft woof. Not his alert bark, not his protection bark, but a gentle greeting that Sarah had rarely heard him use. Emma's blonde head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. The crayon fell from her hand. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one breathed. Then Emma exploded into motion with a shriek of pure joy that made Carol gasp and Dr. Chen, who had followed them in, grab his phone to document this breakthrough. The little girl ran across the room with her arms outstretched, her face transformed from the blank mask she'd worn for weeks into radiant happiness. Big doggy, you came back, you came back. The words tumbled out of her in a waterfall of emotion as she crashed into Rex, wrapping her tiny arms around his thick neck. Rex stood perfectly still, his tail wagging slowly, accepting her embrace with the patience of a saint. Sarah watched in amazement as Emma pressed her face into Rex's fur and began talking, actually talking, in complete sentences. Not to Sarah, not to Dr. Chen, not to her grandmother, but to Rex. I missed you so much. I drew you pictures, see? I make so many pictures. Do you like them? I putted your star badge on them. You're a police doggy. You're the bravest doggy ever. You found me when I was hiding. The scary loud noises stopped when you came. Carol covered her mouth with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Chen frantically scribbled notes, his eyes shining with professional fascination and personal emotion. Over the next hour, Emma didn't stop talking to Rex. She showed him every drawing. She brought him her toys. She told him about her nightmares, her fear of the dark, her worry about her mommy in the hospital. She shared things with the dog that no amount of professional therapy had been able to extract. When it was time to leave, Emma's face crumpled. "No, Big Doggy has to stay." Sarah knelt down beside her. "Emma, sweetie, Rex has to go back to work, but what if we came to visit you again? Would you like that?" Emma looked up at Sarah for the first time with actual recognition, as if she was finally seeing the woman who had carried her to safety. "You're the doggy's mommy." Sarah smiled through unexpected tears. "I'm his partner. We work together." "Can you bring him back tomorrow?" Dr. Chen intervened gently. "How about we set up regular visits, maybe 3 times a week?" Emma considered this, still clutching Rex's fur. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but you promise he'll come back." "I promise," Sarah said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As they drove away, Sarah glanced at Rex in the rearview mirror. The dog sat calmly, but she could have sworn he understood exactly how important he'd just become. A 3-year-old girl had finally found her voice. Now they just had to pray she could use it when it mattered most, in a courtroom where her father's freedom hung in the balance. The autumn leaves crunched under Rex's paws as he bounded up the walkway to Carol Henderson's house for the 7th time in 3 weeks. Sarah had never seen her K-9 partner so eager for anything that wasn't a training exercise or a takedown. The moment she pulled into the driveway, his tail would start wagging, and he'd release excited whines that were completely uncharacteristic of the usually stoic police dog. Before Sarah could even knock, the door flew open. Emma stood there in a purple dress covered in butterflies, her blonde hair pulled into pigtails, her face glowing with anticipation. "Rex! Rex! Rex!" she squealed, and the 70-pound German shepherd carefully lowered himself so the tiny girl could throw her arms around him. "Someone's excited," Carol said from the doorway, but her smile was tinged with sadness. "She wakes up every morning asking if it's a Rex day. On the days you don't come, she barely eats." Dr. Chen emerged from the living room, his notebook in hand. These sessions had become a collaboration, Sarah and Rex providing the emotional bridge, while Dr. Chen carefully observed and documented Emma's progress, or, in some ways, her lack thereof. "She's talking more," Dr. Chen said quietly to Sarah while Emma led Rex to her play area, "but only to the dog. I've tried every technique in my arsenal to get her to transfer that trust to a human, any human. But the moment I ask about that night, she goes silent. It's like she's built a wall, and Rex is the only one with the key to the gate." Sarah watched Emma arrange her stuffed animals in a semicircle around Rex, who lay down patiently as she explained some elaborate game only a 3-year-old could invent. "What about play therapy? Has that helped?" "Watch this," Dr. Chen said, moving to where Emma sat. He picked up a set of dollhouse figures, a father, mother, and child. "Emma, can you show Rex what happened with these people?" Instantly, Emma's entire demeanor changed. Her shoulders hunched. Her hands stopped moving. The light in her eyes dimmed like someone had flipped a switch. She grabbed Rex's collar and buried her face in his neck, her small body beginning to tremble. "It's okay, sweetheart," Dr. Chen said gently, putting the figures away. "We don't have to talk about that." But Emma whispered something into Rex's fur, so quietly that Sarah almost missed it. "The daddy doll is scary. He yells like the bad man." Sarah's heart clenched. It was the first time Emma had made any direct reference to her father since that night. Dr. Chen caught Sarah's eye and nodded slightly. This was progress, even if it was painful to witness. Over the next hour, Sarah observed something remarkable. Emma had created an entire world where Rex was the hero of every story. She'd act out scenarios with her toys where the brave police dog saved princesses from dragons, rescued kittens from trees, and protected children from monsters. Every story ended the same way, the dog keeping everyone safe. You're the best protector in the whole world, Emma told Rex seriously, holding his face between her tiny hands. Nothing bad can happen when you're here. You have magic powers. What kind of magic powers? Sarah asked gently, trying to engage. Emma glanced at Sarah briefly. She was slowly getting more comfortable with the detective's presence before returning her attention to Rex. He can smell fear. He can find people who are lost. He can make the bad go away. She pressed her forehead against Rex's snout. When I was in the dark, scary place, I was so scared I couldn't breathe. Then I smelled him coming. He smells like safety. Carol wiped tears from her eyes. That's the most I've heard her say about that night. But Dr. Chen's expression was troubled. Later, as he walked Sarah to her car while Carol gave Emma and Rex a few final minutes together, he voiced his concerns. She's bonding with Rex, yes, and that's therapeutically valuable. But Sarah, we have a problem. The trial is in 6 weeks. The prosecutor needs Emma to testify, or at least to give a statement that can be used in court. Right now, she'll only talk to a dog. That's not going to work in front of a judge. Sarah leaned against her patrol car, watching through the window as Emma showed Rex a new drawing she'd made. What if we could make it work? What do you mean? There's precedent for facility dogs in courtrooms. I've been researching it. Kids with autism, witnesses with PTSD. There are cases where dogs have been allowed to provide comfort during testimony. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. You're suggesting we bring Rex into court with her? Why not? She trusts him. She talks to him. What if we present it as Emma giving her statement to Rex while court personnel observe and record it? That's highly unusual. I'm not even sure if Ohio law allows it. Then we make new precedent, Sarah said firmly. That little girl in there is the only witness to a brutal attempted murder. Her father nearly killed her mother, and he'll walk free if we can't get Emma's testimony. We have to try something. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, his clinical mind working through the possibilities. It could work, theoretically. Children Emma's age often communicate more freely through transitional objects or trusted companions. If Rex serves as her emotional safe space, she might be able to articulate what she saw while directing her words to him instead of to intimidating authority figures. So you'll support it if the prosecutor files a motion. I'll do better than that. I'll write a professional assessment recommending it. He paused. But Sarah, you need to understand, this has never been done with a child this young in a case this serious. If it fails, if Emma shuts down in that courtroom, we lose our only chance at justice. And if we don't try, we've already lost, Sarah countered. The front door opened and Emma appeared, holding Rex's collar like a lifeline. Do you have to go? She asked, her voice small and heartbreaking. Sarah knelt down. Yes, sweetie, but I promise we'll be back on Thursday. That's only 2 days. Can I ask you something? Emma whispered, still not quite comfortable making direct eye contact with Sarah. Of course. Can Rex come live with me, forever and ever? Sarah felt her heart break a little. Rex has a very important job protecting people, but he loves visiting you. You're his special friend. Emma processed this, then leaned close to Rex's ear. Everyone fell silent, straining to hear what she was saying to the dog. I have to tell you a secret, Emma whispered. A really big secret, but you can't tell anybody, okay? She paused, as if waiting for Rex to agree. I saw everything that night, everything the bad man did. I remember all of it, but if I tell the people, the bad man might come back. You won't let him come back, will you? Rex, as if understanding the weight of her words, gently licked her cheek. Dr. Chen and Sarah exchanged glances. Emma had just confirmed what they desperately needed to know. She could remember. She could testify. She was capable of being a witness. Now they just had to convince a judge that a 3-year-old talking to a police dog could deliver justice. As Sarah drove away, Rex's head turned back toward the house where a little girl stood waving at the window. For the first time in her career, Sarah realized that sometimes the most important police work had nothing to do with badges or guns. Sometimes it required 4 paws, a gentle heart, and the patience to let a broken child heal one word at a time. The real challenge was just beginning. Assistant District Attorney Rachel Thompson had prosecuted over 300 cases in her 12-year career. She'd put away murderers, rapists, and career criminals without breaking a sweat. But as she sat in her office staring at the Emma Clark file, she felt something she rarely experienced: doubt. "It's impossible," her colleague James Park said from the doorway. "You can't put a 3-year-old on the stand. The defense will tear her apart. And even if you could, she won't talk to anyone except a dog. A dog, Rachel. How are you going to explain that to Judge Sullivan?" Rachel rubbed her temples where a headache was forming. Mark Clark's preliminary hearing was in 2 days, and she was running out of options. Jennifer Clark was still recovering. Her testimony would be compromised by her injuries and medications. The physical evidence was strong but circumstantial. Emma was the only person who witnessed the actual attack from beginning to end. "Detective Martinez thinks it could work," Rachel said, pulling out the report Sarah had submitted along with Dr. Chen's psychological assessment. James laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're seriously considering bringing a police dog into Judge Sullivan's courtroom. Patricia Sullivan, who runs the strictest court in Franklin County. She'll laugh you out of her chambers." "Or," Rachel countered, standing up and packing, "she'll see it for what it is, an innovative solution to help a traumatized child participate in the justice system. There's precedent, James. I've found 7 cases in other states where facility dogs were permitted. For adults with PTSD, for teenagers with autism, not for toddlers who think a German Shepherd is their therapist." Rachel spun to face him. That toddler watched her father beat her mother nearly to death. She hid in a closet for 45 minutes listening to her mother's screams. She's 3 years old and she's carrying trauma that would break most adults. If a dog is what she needs to tell her truth, then I'm going to get her that dog. James softened. "I know you care about this case, but Robert Mitchell is one of the best defense attorneys in Ohio. He's already filed motions to suppress Emma's statements to the psychologist, claiming she's too young to distinguish fantasy from reality. If you bring a dog into this, he'll argue it's a circus act designed to manipulate the jury's emotions." "Then I need to make sure Judge Sullivan understands this isn't manipulation, it's accommodation." Rachel grabbed her briefcase. "Where are you going?" "To file a motion for a competency hearing. If I'm going to do this, I need to do it right." 2 days later, Judge Patricia Sullivan's chambers were packed. Rachel sat on one side with Detective Martinez and Dr. Chen. Across from them, Robert Mitchell conferred with his client, Mark Clark, who looked far different from his mugshot: clean-shaven, wearing an expensive suit, every inch the respectable businessman rather than the violent abuser. Judge Sullivan entered, a formidable woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "This better be good, Ms. Thompson. Your motion is one of the most unusual requests I've seen in 30 years on the bench." Rachel stood. "Your Honor, the state requests permission to conduct Emma Clark's competency evaluation with the assistance of a certified K-9 officer, specifically Detective Martinez's partner, Rex. We have substantial evidence that the child can provide critical testimony, but only when in the presence of this particular animal who rescued her." "Objection!" Mitchell was on his feet instantly. "Your Honor, this is absurd. The prosecution wants to turn your courtroom into a petting zoo. A 3-year-old cannot be a competent witness, and allowing a dog to be present is nothing more than a sympathy ploy." "It's established therapy, Your Honor," Dr. Chen interjected, speaking for the first time. "Emma Clark suffers from selective mutism triggered by severe trauma. In clinical settings, she communicates freely and clearly with the dog present. Without the dog, she's completely nonverbal." Judge Sullivan studied the documents before her. "Dr. Chen, You're asking me to believe that a police dog is this child's therapist. Not her therapist, Your Honor. Her safe space. Think of Rex as you would a comfort object, like a security blanket, but one that happens to be alive. The research on animal-assisted therapy is extensive and peer-reviewed. Children with trauma often form attachments to animals because they're non-judgmental, predictable, and safe. Mitchell scoffed. Your Honor, there's a reason we don't allow comfort dogs for adult witnesses. It prejudices the jury. They see a scared person with a cute dog and their objectivity disappears. This isn't about jury prejudice, Rachel argued. This is about whether a child witness can participate in a competency hearing. I'm not asking to bring the dog to trial, yet. I'm simply requesting permission for Rex to be present during the evaluation to determine if Emma can testify at all. Judge Sullivan leaned back in her chair. What does the child say when she talks to this dog? Anything relevant to the case? Sarah spoke up. Your Honor, with your permission. At the judge's nod, she pulled out her phone. This was recorded during a therapy session with Dr. Chen present. Emma is speaking to Rex. The recording played in the silent chambers. Emma's small voice filled the room. The bad man was so angry. He was yelling the really bad words. Mommy told me to hide and be quiet like a mouse. I heard crashing and Mommy crying. Then I couldn't hear Mommy anymore, and that was the scariest part. The room fell silent. Even Mitchell looked shaken. That's hearsay, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's a statement made by a witness describing what she observed, Rachel countered. If she can articulate these details to the dog, she's demonstrating competency. Judge Sullivan's expression was unreadable. Mr. Clark, do you have anything to say? Mark Clark started to stand, but Mitchell grabbed his arm. My client maintains his innocence and believes his daughter is too young to accurately remember events. Convenient, Judge Sullivan said dryly. She looked at Emma's photo clipped to the file, a smiling little girl in pigtails at a birthday party before her world shattered. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to allow a preliminary evaluation with the dog present in my chambers with limited personnel. Ms. Thompson, Dr. Chen, Mr. Mitchell, myself, a court reporter, and the necessary parties. If the child demonstrates competency, truly demonstrates it, not just talks about puppies and rainbows, then I'll consider your request for further accommodation. Rachel's heart soared. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet, Judge Sullivan warned. If this turns into a spectacle, if that child is traumatized further, or if I suspect for one moment that this is about tugging heartstrings rather than seeking truth, I'll shut it down immediately. This court serves justice, not theatrics. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, Your Honor. Mitchell stood, his face flushed with frustration. Your Honor, I must object in the strongest possible terms. Objection noted and overruled. We'll reconvene Thursday at 2 p.m. Bring the dog, Detective Martinez, and Ms. Thompson. That little girl better be ready because you're only getting one shot at this. As they filed out of chambers, Sarah felt Rex press against her leg, sensing her tension. In 3 days, everything would be decided. A 3-year-old, a police dog, and the truth. It seemed impossible. But then again, so did finding a silent child in a dark closet. And Rex had already proven he specialized in impossible things. The Franklin County Courthouse loomed like a fortress of marble and granite, its towering columns designed to intimidate. Detective Sarah Martinez felt Emma's grandmother, Carol, tense beside her as they approached the entrance. In Carol's arms, wrapped in a pink coat despite the mild November day, Emma clutched her one-eyed teddy bear so tightly her knuckles had turned white. I don't know if I can do this, Carol whispered, her voice shaking. Look at her, she's terrified. Sarah glanced down at Emma. The little girl's face had gone pale, her eyes wide and glassy. She hadn't spoken a single word since they'd told her where they were going. Rex is already inside waiting for you, Sarah said gently to Emma. Remember, He's excited to see you." At the mention of Rex's name, Emma's head lifted slightly. "Big Doggy is here." "He's here, sweetheart. He wouldn't miss this for anything." They entered through a side door to avoid the crowds and media that had somehow gotten wind of this unusual hearing. Word had spread through the courthouse like wildfire. A 3-year-old witness, a police dog, a murder case hanging in the balance. Officers who had worked with Sarah for years lined the hallway, some offering encouraging nods, others looking skeptical. Martinez, a veteran detective named Lou Brennan, called out, "This really happening? A K-9 in Sullivan's court?" "It's happening," Sarah confirmed, though her own stomach churned with anxiety. "That's either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the craziest." "Maybe both," Sarah muttered. Judge Sullivan's courtroom was nothing like the playful, colorful therapy room where Emma had grown comfortable with Rex. High ceilings stretched 30 feet overhead. Dark wood paneling absorbed what little warmth the afternoon sun provided through tall windows. The judge's bench sat elevated like a throne, imposing and severe. Even empty, the room radiated authority and judgment. Dr. Chen met them outside the courtroom doors. "How is she?" Carol's expression said everything. Emma had retreated into herself, that familiar blank mask sliding over her features. She stopped talking 20 minutes ago. "That's normal," Dr. Chen assured them, though concern flickered in his eyes. "The environment is triggering her anxiety, but once she sees Rex..." The courtroom doors opened. Rachel Thompson emerged, her professional composure barely concealing her nerves. "Judge Sullivan is ready. We're keeping this as informal as possible given the circumstances. Emma, honey." She knelt down to the child's eye level. "There are some people who want to meet you, and Rex is inside waiting. Would you like to see him?" Emma's only response was to burrow deeper into Carol's shoulder. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Judge Sullivan sat at her bench, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed documents. Robert Mitchell stood near the defense table with Mark Clark, who stared at his daughter with an expression that might have been remorse or might have been calculation. Sarah couldn't tell which. Court reporter Janet Mills had positioned herself discreetly to one side, her stenography machine ready. 2 bailiffs stood at attention, and in the gallery, a handful of police officers who'd worked the case sat as observers. And there, sitting calmly beside the witness area, was Rex. The moment Emma entered the courtroom, her entire body went rigid. Her eyes darted around the huge space, taking in the flags, the seal, the stern-faced adults. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. Carol looked at Sarah desperately. The child was on the verge of a full panic attack. Then Rex stood up. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He simply rose to his feet, his tail beginning a slow, steady wag, his brown eyes locked onto Emma with that same gentle patience he'd shown in the closet that terrible night. "Doggy," Emma whispered, so quietly it was almost inaudible. "Yes, baby," Carol said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your doggy is here." Emma wiggled in Carol's arms, trying to get down. The moment her feet touched the floor, she started toward Rex, then stopped, intimidated by all the watching eyes. She looked back at Carol uncertainly. Judge Sullivan's voice when she spoke was softer than Sarah had ever heard it. "It's all right, Emma. You can go to him." But Emma remained frozen, caught between her desperate need for Rex's comfort and her overwhelming fear of this strange, formal place. Sarah made a decision. She walked to Rex and unclipped his leash. "Rex, go." The German shepherd moved with careful deliberation, crossing the courtroom floor with measured steps. He approached Emma slowly, giving her time to process, to adjust. When he reached her, he lowered his head and gently nudged her hand with his nose, the same gesture he'd used in the closet. The effect was instantaneous and profound. Emma threw herself at Rex, her arms wrapping around his neck, her face buried in his fur. "You're here. You're here. I was so scared, but you're here." Officers in the gallery exchanged glances. Mitchell whispered urgently to Mark Clark. Dr. Chen pulled out his notebook, documenting every detail. Judge Sullivan removed her glasses, her stern expression softening imperceptibly. "Bring her forward, please." Carol started to lift Emma, but Sarah intervened. "Let Rex do it." Understanding, Sarah gave Rex the command. "Rex, bring her." The dog, with Emma still clinging to his neck, slowly walked toward the witness area. Emma's feet dragged on the floor, but she didn't let go, didn't resist. Where Rex went, she would follow. They reached the space in front of Judge Sullivan's bench. The judge looked down at the tiny girl attached to the large dog, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, perhaps, of just how small and vulnerable this witness truly was. "Emma," Judge Sullivan said gently, "my name is Judge Sullivan. Do you know why you're here?" Silence. Emma's face remained hidden in Rex's fur. Dr. Chen stepped forward. "Your Honor, if I may." Emma responds better to indirect questioning through Rex. Judge Sullivan considered this, then nodded. "Proceed." Rachel Thompson knelt beside Emma and Rex. Her voice was soft, non-threatening. "Emma, can you tell Rex why we're all here today?" For a long moment, nothing. The courtroom held its collective breath. Then Emma turned her head slightly, just enough to whisper into Rex's ear. "They want me to talk about the bad night, the night you saved me." Janet Mills' fingers flew across her stenography machine, capturing every word. "Can you tell Rex what you remember about that night?" Rachel asked, her heart pounding. Emma's small hand gripped Rex's fur tighter. The silence stretched so long that Mitchell started to stand, preparing to object, to declare this entire proceeding a failure. Then Emma began to speak. And when she did, everyone in that courtroom understood they were witnessing something extraordinary and heartbreaking beyond measure. The courtroom was so quiet that the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed deafening. Emma remained pressed against Rex, her tiny fingers twisted in his thick fur, her face half hidden. Every person in that room leaned forward unconsciously, straining to hear the small voice that held the key to justice. "The bad night started when Daddy came home late," Emma whispered to Rex, her words barely audible. Janet Mills, the court reporter, adjusted her microphone closer, her face a mask of professional concentration even as tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. Rachel Thompson remained kneeling beside them, not interrupting, letting Emma set the pace. Dr. Chen had stressed this: let the child control the narrative. Don't push. Don't prompt, just listen. "Mommy was making dinner," Emma continued, her voice taking on that peculiar quality children have when recounting traumatic memories, flat, almost robotic, as if describing someone else's story. "I was playing with my dollies in the living room. Then Daddy came in and he smelled funny. Not like Daddy, like the bad smell that makes Mommy sad." Mark Clark shifted in his seat. Mitchell placed a hand on his client's arm, warning him to stay still, stay quiet. He started yelling, really loud, the words Mommy says I'm never allowed to say. Emma's grip on Rex tightened. The dog remained perfectly motionless, a living anchor in her storm of memories. "Mommy told me to go upstairs, but I was scared. I hid behind the couch instead." Judge Sullivan's pen had stopped moving. She sat frozen, listening to this child's testimony with an intensity that commanded absolute silence from everyone present. "What did you see from behind the couch, sweetie?" Rachel asked gently, using the technique Dr. Chen had taught her. "Can you tell Rex what you saw?" Emma's breathing quickened. Sarah watched the child carefully, ready to intervene if this became too much. But Emma pressed her face into Rex's neck, drew strength from his steady heartbeat, and continued. "Daddy pushed Mommy, she fall down, then he kicked her, right here." Emma touched her own ribs. "Mommy made a hurt sound, like when I falled off the swing and couldn't breathe." In the gallery, Officer Lou Brennan wiped his eyes. Two female officers held hands, their faces stricken. These were hardened police veterans who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer, but hearing it described in a 3-year-old's innocent vocabulary was unbearable. Then Mommy tried to run to the kitchen, but Daddy grabbed her hair. Emma's voice cracked. He pulled her back and hurted her face. There was red stuff, so much red stuff. It glowed everywhere, on the floor, on the walls, on Mommy's pretty yellow shirt. "Objection," Mitchell said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Your Honor, this is." "Overruled," Judge Sullivan said sharply, her eyes never leaving Emma. "Continue, child." Emma was trembling now, but she didn't stop. It was as if the words had been trapped inside her for so long that now, finally feeling safe enough with Rex, they poured out in a devastating flood. Mommy was crying and saying, please stop, Emma's here, please." But Daddy didn't stop, he just kept hitting and hitting. Emma's small body shook with suppressed sobs. Then Mommy looked at me behind the couch. Her eye was really big and scared. She mouthed the words. Emma paused, demonstrating by moving her lips silently. "Hide." Carol covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming freely down her face. Sarah felt her own throat constrict painfully. "So I runned upstairs really quiet like a mouse. I go to my room and I hide it in the closet behind the winter coats like Mommy and me practiced for hide-and-seek. But this wasn't a game." Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I could still hear everything, the crashing, the bad words, Mommy crying, and then she stopped making sounds, and that was the most scariest part ever. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mark Clark's face had drained of all color. He stared at his daughter with an expression of dawning horror, as if truly comprehending for the first time what she had endured. "How long were you in the closet, Emma?" Dr. Chen asked softly. "Forever and ever. It was so dark I couldn't see anything. I holded Mr. Bear really tight and I tried not to cry because Mommy said to be quiet." Emma's whole body trembled. "I heard Daddy walking around downstairs. I heard glass breaking. I heard the back door. Then it was just quiet. So quiet." Rachel glanced at her notes. The timeline matched perfectly with what the neighbors had reported. Mark Clark fleeing through the backyard approximately 45 minutes after the initial 911 call. "I was so scared," Emma continued, and now the tears came running down her cherubic cheeks into Rex's fur. "I thought maybe Mommy was gone forever. I thought maybe the bad man would come find me. I couldn't stop shaking. My tummy hurted. I couldn't breathe right." Rex, sensing her escalating distress, shifted slightly and licked her face. A gentle, reassuring gesture that made Emma hiccup out a small laugh through her tears. "Then I did something Mommy taught me," Emma said, her voice gaining a slight strength. "When you're really, really scared, you pray. So I closed my eyes really tight and I talked to God. I said, please, God, I'm really scared. Please send someone to help me. Please send someone brave and strong. Please send an angel." The courtroom was absolutely still. No one moved, no one breathed. Emma lifted her tear-stained face and looked directly into Rex's gentle brown eyes. What she said next would echo through that courtroom for years to come, a moment so pure and profound that even the most cynical among them would never forget it. "And then I smelled you coming," Emma said to Rex, her small hands cupping his face with infinite tenderness. "I smelled you before I heard you. You smelled like safety and like brave and like love. And when you pushed open the closet door and I saw you, I knowed right away." She pressed her forehead against Rex's snout, her next words ringing out with absolute conviction in the hushed courtroom. "God sent you. You're my angel. You saved me." The impact was instantaneous and overwhelming. Officer Brennan openly wept. The two female officers embraced, their shoulders shaking. Sarah felt tears streaming down her own face as she watched her partner, her brave, loyal, incredible partner, sit perfectly still while a traumatized child poured out her heart to him. Dr. Chen's clinical detachment crumbled. Rachel Thompson's hand flew to her mouth. Even the bailiffs, trained to remain stoic, blinked rapidly against moisture in their eyes. But it was Judge Patricia Sullivan's reaction that truly revealed the magnitude of the moment. The stern, unflappable judge removed her glasses with shaking hands and pressed her fingers against her eyes. When she lowered them, her face was wet with tears she didn't bother to hide. And at the defense table, Mark Clark broke. His expensive suit couldn't hide the man collapsing under the weight of what his daughter had just revealed. He doubled over, his face in his hands, his shoulders heaving with sobs. Not the calculated tears of a manipulative defendant, but the raw, ugly crying of a man confronting the monster he'd become. "I'm sorry," he gasped, his voice broken. "Oh God, Emma, I'm so sorry. Baby, I'm so sorry." Mitchell grabbed his client's arm, hissing, "Don't say anything," but Mark Clark shook him off. "She prayed for an angel," he sobbed, looking at his daughter who wouldn't meet his eyes, who only had eyes for the dog who'd saved her. She was 3 years old, hiding in the dark, terrified, and she had to pray for someone to save her from me, from her own father. "Mr. Clark," Judge Sullivan began, but he stood abruptly. "I did it, all of it, everything she said. I don't want a trial. I don't want my daughter to suffer any more because of me." He looked at Rachel Thompson, his face ravaged by guilt and grief. "I'll take whatever plea you offer, whatever sentence. I deserve all of it." The courtroom erupted. Mitchell tried to control his client. Officers moved forward. Rachel stood, stunned by this sudden turn. But Emma, still holding Rex, simply whispered into his fur, "The bad man is crying. Does that mean he's sorry?" Rex licked her face again, and Emma smiled, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her in that courtroom. "You're still my angel," she told him, "forever and ever." And in that moment, everyone understood. Justice would be served, but more importantly, healing had begun. One little girl, one police dog, and one stunning truth had changed everything. Judge Patricia Sullivan called for a 15-minute recess, her voice thick with emotion she couldn't quite conceal. The courtroom cleared slowly, people moving in a daze, processing what they'd just witnessed. Sarah guided Emma and Rex to a small witness room where Carol waited with juice boxes and graham crackers, normalcy in a surreal situation. "Did I do good?" Emma asked, her small voice uncertain as she munched on a cracker, sitting cross-legged on the floor with Rex's head in her lap. Carol knelt beside her granddaughter, smoothing blonde hair back from her tear-stained face. "You were so brave, sweetheart, the bravest girl in the whole world." "Rex was brave too," Emma insisted, feeding the dog a piece of cracker. "We were brave together." Sarah stepped into the hallway where chaos had erupted. Rachel Thompson was on her phone with the district attorney, her voice animated. "Sir, he confessed. Right there in open court. Full confession. We need to move on a plea agreement immediately before his attorney talks him out of it." Down the hall, Robert Mitchell had his client pressed against the wall, speaking in urgent, angry whispers. Mark Clark's expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, his face blotchy and swollen from crying. "You just confessed to attempted murder in front of a judge, court reporter, and a dozen witnesses. Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand that my 3-year-old daughter had to hide in a closet praying for God to save her from me," Mark Clark shot back, his voice raw. "I understand that she had to tell a dog what I did because she's too traumatized to tell people. I'm done, Rob. I'm done lying. I'm done pretending. I did this. I have to face it." Mitchell ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "At least let me negotiate the best possible terms." "I don't deserve the best possible terms," Mark's shout echoed through the marble hallway. Several officers turned to look. "My wife is in the hospital with a broken jaw, fractured ribs, and a concussion. My daughter has PTSD. I deserve whatever they give me." Sarah watched this exchange with mixed feelings. Part of her, the detective who'd seen Jennifer Clark's broken body, wanted Mark Clark to suffer. But another part, the part that had just watched a little girl describe her trauma, recognized genuine remorse when she saw it. Dr. Michael Chen emerged from another room where he'd been consulting with the district attorney's office via video call. He approached Sarah, with an expression of professional satisfaction mixed with deep sadness. "They want my formal assessment," he said quietly. "Everything I observed in there will go into the record." "And what will you say?" Dr. Chen glanced back toward the witness room where Emma's laughter, actual laughter, could be heard as she played with Rex. "I'll say that Emma Clark demonstrated remarkable clarity and consistency in her recall of traumatic events, that her testimony, while unconventionally delivered, showed none of the markers of coaching or fabrication, that her selective communication through the dog is a documented trauma response, not a sign of incompetence." He paused. "I'll also say that what happened in that courtroom was the most therapeutically significant breakthrough I've witnessed in 20 years of practice." Judge Sullivan reconvened court 30 minutes later. The gallery had filled with more observers. Word had spread through the courthouse like wildfire. A 3-year-old had testified through a police dog. A defendant had confessed. Legal history was being made. Emma sat on the floor near the witness stand with Rex, coloring in a princess coloring book someone had provided. She seemed calmer now, more settled, as if the act of finally telling her story had released some terrible pressure that had been building inside her. "Mr. Clark," Judge Sullivan addressed the defendant, her tone formal but not unkind, "I need to establish for the record, do you wish to change your plea at this time?" Mark Clark stood, his attorney beside him looking resigned. "Yes, Your Honor. I plead guilty to attempted murder, domestic violence, child endangerment, and any other charges the prosecution wants to file. I did everything my daughter said I did. I have no defense. I don't want one." "Your Honor," Mitchell interjected weakly, "I'd like to request a psychiatric evaluation before we proceed." "No," Mark interrupted firmly. "I was drunk and angry, but I knew exactly what I was doing. I'm not insane, I was a monster." Judge Sullivan studied him carefully. "Mr. Clark, you understand that by pleading guilty, you're waiving your right to a trial, that you could face up to 25 years in prison." "I understand, and frankly, Your Honor, it's less than I deserve." Rachel Thompson stood. "Your Honor, the state requests a recess to prepare a formal plea agreement. Given Mr. Clark's cooperation and the victim's condition, both victims' conditions, we believe a structured agreement serves justice better than a prolonged trial." "Agreed," Judge Sullivan said. "We'll reconvene in 1 week for the plea hearing. Mr. Clark, you'll remain in custody. Bail is denied." As the bailiffs moved to escort Mark Clark out, he paused near where Emma sat with Rex. The little girl looked up, her crayon frozen mid-stroke. For a long moment, father and daughter stared at each other across an unbridgeable chasm of trauma and betrayal. "Emma," Mark said, his voice breaking, "I know you probably can't hear this right now, but I need to say it. I love you. I've always loved you. What I did had nothing to do with you or your mother being anything less than perfect. It was all me. All my weakness, my anger, my sickness." Tears ran freely down his face. "You deserved a better father. You deserved to feel safe in your own home. I'm so sorry I took that from you." Emma didn't respond to him. Instead, she leaned close to Rex and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "The bad man is saying sorry words, but sorry doesn't make mommy's hurts go away, does it?" Rex licked her cheek and Emma nodded as if he'd answered. "That's what I thought." The simple wisdom of a 3-year-old silenced the room. Mark Clark's shoulders shook with sobs as the bailiffs led him away. He'd wanted forgiveness, absolution, but Emma had given him something more valuable, truth. As the courtroom emptied, Dr. Chen approached Judge Sullivan. "Your Honor, what happened here today allowing Emma to testify through Rex, this could change how we handle child witnesses across the country." Judge Sullivan watched Emma skip out of the courtroom holding Carol's hand, with Sarah and Rex following protectively behind. "Dr. Chen, I've been a judge for 3 decades. I've heard thousands of testimonies, but I've never heard anything as honest, as devastating, or as powerful as what that little girl said to that dog today." She gathered her papers, her usual stern demeanor softening. Sometimes justice isn't about following the rules exactly as they're written. It's about being wise enough to know when the rules need to bend to serve truth. Outside the courthouse, news cameras had gathered. Sarah shielded Emma from their view, but reporters shouted questions anyway. Detective Martinez, is it true a police dog helped a toddler testify? Will this set a precedent for other cases? Can we interview the child? Sarah stopped and turned to face them, her voice firm. Emma Clark is a 3-year-old trauma survivor who showed extraordinary courage today. She deserves privacy and respect as she heals. That's all I'll say. As they drove away from the courthouse, Emma spoke up from the back seat where she sat next to Rex. Can we get ice cream? Me and Rex saved the day. Heroes get ice cream. Carol laughed through tears. Yes, baby, heroes definitely get ice cream. And for the first time since that terrible night, Emma smiled all the way to Baskin-Robbins. A real, genuine, healing smile. Justice had been served. But more importantly, a little girl was beginning to reclaim her childhood. 6 months had passed since that extraordinary day in Judge Sullivan's courtroom. Spring had arrived in Columbus, transforming the city with cherry blossoms and the promise of new beginnings. Detective Sarah Martinez pulled up to a familiar ranch house in the suburbs, but this time the visit felt different, lighter, filled with joy rather than necessity. Before she could even unbuckle her seatbelt, the front door burst open. A little girl in a bright yellow sundress came racing down the walkway, her blonde pigtails bouncing, her face split by an enormous grin. Rex, you're here for my party, Emma squealed, throwing her arms around the German shepherd who had bounded out to meet her. At nearly 4 years old now, Emma had grown taller, healthier, and radiated a confidence that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Happy early birthday, sweetheart, Sarah said, carrying a wrapped present decorated with drawings of police dogs that she'd commissioned from a local artist. I'm gonna be 4, Emma announced proudly, holding up 4 fingers. That's a really big number. Mommy says I'm getting so grown up. Mommy's right, came a voice from the doorway. Jennifer Clark stood there, looking remarkably different from the broken woman Sarah had seen in the hospital. Her jaw had healed, though a faint scar remained along her cheekbone, a permanent reminder she'd chosen not to hide. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, her eyes were clear and bright, and she radiated strength. Sarah, thank you so much for coming, Jennifer said warmly, embracing the detective. Emma's been talking about nothing else for days. When is Rex coming? Will he like my cake? Can he wear a party hat? All very important questions, Sarah laughed, though I think the party hat might be pushing it. Inside, the house was decorated with streamers and balloons. A banner read, Happy 4th Birthday, Emma, and a special smaller banner underneath said, Honorary Junior Officer Celebration. The coffee table held a Princess Castle cake, and beside it, a dog-friendly pupcake topped with a single candle. Carol emerged from the kitchen carrying snacks, her face lighting up when she saw them. There's my favorite police team. Emma, why don't you show Detective Sarah what arrived yesterday? Emma grabbed Sarah's hand and practically dragged her to the living room wall. There, framed in a place of honor, hung an official certificate from the Columbus Police Department. It declared Emma Clark an honorary junior officer and commended her extraordinary courage and service to justice. Below it was a photo from the ceremony held at police headquarters, Emma in a tiny police uniform, grinning beside Rex, who wore a special medal she'd presented him. Everyone at the police station knows who I am, Emma said proudly. Officer Brennan said I'm the bravest officer he knows, even though I'm really small. You are brave, Sarah confirmed, crouching down to Emma's level. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. Rex is brave too, Emma insisted, as she always did. We're a team. The doorbell rang, and Emma raced to answer it. Dr. Michael Chen entered with his wife and 2 children, carrying presents. Behind them came Rachel Thompson, the prosecutor who had fought so hard for Emma's voice to be heard. Then Officer Brennan and his family. Then more officers who had been in the courtroom that day. It wasn't just a birthday party. It was a celebration of healing, of justice, of a community that had rallied around one little girl. As the party filled with laughter and the chaos of children playing, Jennifer pulled Sarah aside to the kitchen. "I wanted you to know," Jennifer said softly, "Mark's doing the program, the anger management, the addiction counseling, all of it. He writes to Emma letters that I keep for her to read when she's older if she ever wants to. He's not asking for forgiveness. He's just trying to become someone who might someday deserve to know she exists." Mark Clark had received 15 years with the possibility of parole after 12, contingent on completing extensive rehabilitation programs. It was a sentence that satisfied no one completely, but felt like the closest thing to justice they could achieve. "How do you feel about that?" Sarah asked carefully. Jennifer considered this, watching through the doorway as Emma showed Dr. Chen's children her police badge and certificate. "I'm not ready to forgive him. Maybe I never will be, but I'm not carrying hate anymore either. It was too heavy. I've got Emma to raise, a life to rebuild, and other women to help." She smiled softly. "I started volunteering at the domestic violence shelter, helping other women find their strength. Turns out surviving gives you a superpower, empathy." In the living room, Rachel Thompson was deep in conversation with Dr. Chen about the program they'd created. The Columbus Police Department had officially launched its courthouse facility dog program 3 months ago, with Rex as the founding K-9 officer. Already, 12 other traumatized children had found their voices with canine assistance. Other jurisdictions were calling, wanting to implement similar programs. "We're getting calls from across the country," Rachel told the group. "Judges, prosecutors, victim advocates, everyone wants to know about the Emma Clark case. She changed the entire system." "No," Dr. Chen corrected gently, nodding toward where Emma was now trying to teach Rex to play musical chairs with the other children. "She and Rex changed the system. Together." As the afternoon wore on and cake was served, including Rex's special pup cake, which he consumed in approximately 3 seconds, Emma stood on a chair to make an announcement. "I want to say thank you to everyone," she declared in her high, clear voice. "Thank you for coming to my party, thank you for the presents, but most thank you to Rex." She climbed down and hugged the dog fiercely. "Because when I was really, really scared, God sent me an angel, and angels don't leave you, they stay forever and ever." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, as the party wound down and guests departed with promises to stay in touch, Emma grew drowsy. She curled up on the couch with Rex, her head pillowed on his side, completely content. "She's going to be okay," Carol said to Sarah, both women watching the peaceful scene. "Really okay." "She already is," Sarah replied. "Look at her." As Sarah and Rex prepared to leave, Emma stirred awake just enough to mumble, "Same time next week, for our park walk." "Same time next week," Sarah promised. "Every week, Emma, that's our deal. Forever and ever. Forever and ever." Emma smiled, already drifting back to sleep, secure in the knowledge that her angel would return. 3 years later. Emma Clark, now 7 years old, stood before her second-grade class for show and tell. She held a framed photograph of herself at 3 years old with a large German shepherd. "This is Rex," she told her classmates. "He was a police dog who saved my life when I was little. He taught me that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared." Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, smiled encouragingly. "Is Rex still your friend, Emma?" Emma's smile faltered only slightly. "Rex retired last year because he's getting older, but Detective Sarah brings him to visit me every single week. And now there's a whole program of police dogs who help kids like Rex helped me. Detective Sarah says Rex started something really important." She touched the photograph gently. My mommy says that sometimes God sends angels when we need them most, and sometimes angels have 4 legs and fur and the biggest, bravest heart in the whole world. Rex sounds wonderful, Mrs. Patterson said warmly. He is, Emma agreed, her voice strong and clear, the voice of a child who had survived the unthinkable and emerged whole. He's my hero, forever and ever. Outside that school, across Columbus and spreading throughout the country, courthouse facility dog programs were changing lives. Traumatized children were finding their voices. Justice was being served with compassion. And all because one little girl, one police dog, and one extraordinary bond had proven that sometimes the most powerful testimony comes not from legal precedent or traditional procedure, but from unconditional love, patience, and trust. Emma Clark had been only 3 when what she said to a police dog in court stunned every officer present. But her impact would last generations. One angel, one child, one truth that changed everything. The end.